So let's learn how to build our very own polygraph. The first step is to open up a window and go to teacher.desmos.com. Once you've done that, this will be the screen that you're taken to. Notice you'll be prompted to either create an account or to sign in. When you use a polygraph in your classroom, you have to have an account to run the game through. So we're going to go ahead and sign in since I already have an account. Once you're signed into the account, it'll take you to your dashboard. On your dashboard, the way that it's organized is the first thing you see are the recent sessions. These are any of the activities that you've recently built and or recently looked at. The next organization is activities by Desmos, followed by your custom activities, and then your start activities. I haven't done this yet, so there aren't any in there for my dashboard. In a moment, we're going to come back to this custom polygraph so I can walk you through the step-by-step of how to make one. But first, why should we use a polygraph in our classroom and what the heck is this? So I'm going to go ahead and pull up one of my polygraphs that I made. This one I used in my Algebra 2 classroom. It was on quadratics, polynomials, and rationals. So as I open this and scroll down here, you'll notice it brings me to a different kind of window, if you will. And it shows that I have past sessions with the codes to access those sessions. Every time you start a new session, you're given a new code. So teacher tip, I would put this code on the whiteboard so that way students have access to it the entire time you're playing the game. The other awesome part I would make mention of is to use different codes for different periods if you're trying to do some type of assessment with this game. A game can be used for assessment, checking for understanding, or simply something fun to be done. So now, what the heck is it? So we're going to go ahead and click this blue Learn More button, and you're going to be able to see my full polygraph. And so as we scroll down here, you notice that there are 16 different graphs displaying. And so what's going to end up happening is that students are going to sign in using that course code. And then once they're logged into the game, they are going to randomly be paired with another person in their class. The point of the game is for one of the partners to pick a graph at random, and then the other partner is going to ask yes. Well, they're not going to ask, they're going to type yes or no questions for the partner who picked the graph to answer. I love polygraphs because they highlight the students' understanding of the vocabulary as well as the conceptual parts of what graphing requires. If you're unsure about what a polygraph is, if you click here, this Learn More, it'll go ahead and Desmos has already given you step-by-step directions describing what a polygraph is. So here's what it is. If this section explains the student experience in a bit more detail, and then followed by this section explaining the teacher's experience in a bit more detail. If you are new to a polygraph completely, I recommend at this time pausing this video to take a moment to read through this part of the screen. So now let's go ahead and start building our very own polygraph. So we're going to go ahead and go back here to the original activity dashboard. And once we're on that dashboard again, we're going to go down to your custom activities and we're going to create a custom polygraph. When you're creating these polygraphs, I do recommend that you try to limit the amount of different kinds of graphs that you're putting onto the grid because that allows for better questions and more vocabulary being asked. Sometimes if you use a large variety of questions, students can too easily say, well, is your graph the cubic? And if that's the only cubic graph on the 16 graphs to choose from, well, then the game ends up being pretty short. So let's go ahead and just keep it simple and we'll title this Linear Graphs. And we're going to click Start Building. And then now notice in the window right here, you have the opportunity to put 16 different graphs. Please note, again, another teacher tip here, is that the window that every student sees them in, the graphs are in the same order. So one thing that I inform my students that they are not allowed to do in this game is they're not allowed to say, is your graph the one on the top row far left-hand side? So let's go ahead now and start building. So we're just going to go ahead and throw in some simple ones here in the equation part of the screen. So y equals 2. Let's go ahead and start with some constants. Next teacher tip, I recommend keeping all the graphs the same color because, again, when you start making too many variations, the students will start asking questions saying like, is your graph the red one? And again, the point of this game is to build their academic vocabulary and their graphing conceptual basis. So then once you are satisfied with the graph you've entered, you go ahead and hit enter. So then now let's do a different one. I'm going to say y equals -4. How about we throw in some vertical lines? X equals 1, x equals 0. And now let's go ahead and actually start putting in a line with a slope. So y equals x, y equals -x, y equals 2x, y equals -2x. And notice what I did there is that I alternated between having both positives and negative slopes and kept the y and x intercept 0, 0 for all 4 of them. That's another teacher tip to keep in mind when you're building your own, is you want to make sure that there are multiple graphs that meet the same characteristics, because it'll really encourage your students to ask more sophisticated questions involving their academic vocabulary. So then now let's go ahead and start moving around the y-intercept and the slope at the same time. So we'll say 3x plus 1, -3x minus 1 equals 2x plus 2, -2x plus 2. And then let's go ahead and actually put in a fractional slope. And so if you're not familiar with the equation editor, you can go ahead and just simply hit, if we wanted a slope of 3/4, we would say 3 divided by 4, and then use your arrow key right, and that'll go ahead and get your variable to the correct side. So I've just got a couple more here to finish up, and then we'll be on to the next step. Okay, notice that was not the graph that I wanted to go ahead and make. So if I go back and click on it, I can edit it from there. So that was definitely not what I wanted. So there. Okay, so then now I've got all 16 graphs displayed here to the right. We're going to go ahead and hit enter, and it's going to prompt us to add a description. You don't have to do this, but if you're planning to make your activity public, which is what this says I'm doing right here, then you probably want to add a description to help other teachers out to find it. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that this is a polygraph for only linear graphs. Okay. If you wanted to maybe include there, it's primarily for Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 or whatever the subject may be. Those are other tips that teachers tend to like to see in the description. And then I'm going to click Done. Now that it's done and saved, it's going to go ahead and take us to this screen. And notice you're given multiple options. You can start a new session. You can duplicate the activity, and then if you wanted to just make some minor changes, you could go ahead and do that. You can go ahead and edit your activity. If you wanted to share it with a team of teachers you're working with, you can just copy and paste this URL right here. Once you've clicked starting a new session, it'll give you that session code. You'll have the students log into student.desmos.com. Best part, they don't have to have an account. They can just go ahead and put any name in, and it'll still track their progress, and you'll be able to see it because they're using the course code, or the session code that you're giving to them. Once students log in, you'll be able to see any question that the students ask. You'll also be able to show those results, and you'll be able to save those results so you can come back to later. I hope you enjoyed learning about how to make your very own polygraph. Best of luck to you, and have fun playing.